We are the ancient Egyptians. Don't think about it, just do it. When my children were little, my wife and I would take them to visit the Field Museum in Chicago. I loved to visit the Mesoamerican section and the ancient Egyptian exhibit. The Field Museum had a very fine Egyptian collection. They had Egyptian mummies and artifacts relating to all the major periods. I always found it interesting that when we were in the Egyptian exhibit, the non-Afro-Americans visiting the exhibit would sheepishly look at the exhibits and then stare at me and my children. It was interesting because it appeared that the non-Afro-American visitors, after staring at us, had a depressed look on their face, as they left the exhibit. Back in the day, I didn't understand why non-Afro-Americans might be depressed after seeing the exhibit while we were inside the exhibit. Many years later, I thought about this phenomenon, but I didn't understand this until I read the work of Anta Diop and did comparative historical linguistics to reconstruct the paleo-history of Afro-Americans and West Africans. As a result of my research, I learned that ancient Egypt was a pan-African civilization, and that many nomes in ancient Egypt were inhabited by various West African tribes. Anta Diop proved that these tribes, after the fall of ancient Egypt, migrated into West Africa. This truth was supported by the presence of West Africans practicing aspects of Egyptian civilization, and they spoke languages genetically related to the ancient Egyptian language. This finding led to an epiphany. I finally understood why non-Afro-Americans looked at us strange in the exhibit at the Field Museum in Chicago. They were looking at us strange because they intuitively understood that we Afro-Americans looked just like the Egyptians. What made my research into Diop interesting is because he proved that West Africans, like the Mandi, Fulani, and Wolof, formerly lived in ancient Egypt. This was a powerful discovery because these are the same slaves sold in America during the Atlantic slave trade. Wow, I thought. Afro-Americans did not only look like the ancient Egyptians, our ancestors were the ancient Egyptians. And now, due to the research of Diop, I could prove it. I'm happy today. I discovered the work of Diop and that our Afro-American African ancestors were the ancient Egyptians. This proved that you should not just think about your history. Just do some research and find out the truth.